for more on this game. Let's welcome in, shall we? Jurgen Klinsmann's with us, as is Stewart. Robson. We'll be hearing from you guys in a moment. But great, that was just brilliant, wasn't it?
No, it was
so
brilliant.
much fun.
I hope the two managers, Ancelotti and Guardiola, are sat in Ancelotti's manager's room with a litre and a half of red wine each. And I hope they've drank it all. Because that was, I would imagine for them, wasn't the most fun.
Yeah.
But for us, for the neutral, for the fans, you know, it was so entertaining. It was a final. It was played like a final. And we saw some of the deficiencies we've seen from City before. And, you know, in previous seasons, they showed that up last year. They've come back to haunt them at times this year, and that is making bad decisions at the back. And when you do that against this Real Madrid side, they'll take advantage. But, you know, you cannot fault these guys. You know, even from City's perspective, I didn't think it was Foden's best game, to be honest with you. I didn't think it was Rodri's best game, to be quite frank. But they've managed to peel it back.
Yeah.
And the other thing that impressed me was Vinicius Junior, the work rate. We talk about his talent, but he looked to me tonight as if he was laying it all on the line. It just meant so much to everyone in that field tonight. It was a brilliant game of football. City are obviously favourites, but if they make the same mistakes at the Etihad, this side will punish them. There is no doubt about that.
There was nothing cagey about this game whatsoever.
No, not at all. I guess for me the only question now is, can Real Madrid be as devastating on the counter-attack in Manchester? Because it's one thing to be able to do it at home when the crowd's behind you, you're at home, you know, you've got plenty of space in front of you. It's not as easy when you're away from home, because I don't see the second leg being any different to this. Man City absolutely will push Real Madrid back. And again, it'll depend on, can Real Madrid keep them out, and can Rodrigo and Vinny, with the pace they've got, I mean, they gave them a torrid time the whole game with the pace. Can they do that in Manchester?
Well, this game was a bit like a computer game that you commentate on. It was so open.
It certainly was, and I have to agree with the guys. I mean, the way the Vinicius Junior, who played mainly through the centre forward at the start of the game, and they put Rodrigo out on the left-hand side, how they were able to pick their passes and make their runs. Yes, poor defending at times by Man City, but I thought it was exceptional the way they continued time and time again to get in behind Man City. And Man City, and I agree with Craig again, Rodri didn't have his best game. He's been magnificent all season, but he gave the ball away 2 or 3 times, and it started the counter-attacks off. And so did Bernardo Silva a couple of times. And again, I would go back to the point I made last week. There was times today when Man City wanted to go from Ortega to the centre forward, and 7 times it happened where he was isolated 1v1 against Rudiger, and Haaland didn't keep hold of the ball. And I think that just upset Man City a bit on occasions.
Just fantastic. And as a manager, you just go from one extreme to another, you know, a positive, negative, negative. And you rely on the brilliance of your players. And obviously now we have, in the quarterfinals of the Champions League, we have so many brilliant players that can make the difference in any split second. And to watch those games today, it was just simply fun.
Manchester City have to get back to being better defensively when they have the ball.
Right.
People might say, well, that seems a bit strange. What I mean by that is they have so much possession in games that the guys that are behind the play have to be talking and positioning themselves much better than they have a lot of times this season, because if they have a 2 or 3 moments like they did today where they've lost it in bad areas, which they don't normally do, but they were pressured into doing that. You know, Foden lost it, Rodri lost it, Kovacic lost it in key areas, and then they were out of position at the back. This team will take advantage of that. So they have to. Last year they were brilliant at doing both. That's why they won the FA Cup, the League, the Champions League. Okay, the Champions League final was a bit of a struggle. They had to do more defending than they would have liked against Inter Milan. They didn't play particularly well. Well, certainly not as well as we know they can. But defensively last year, you could argue that part of the game was as good as their attacking, almost. This year, there's a big gulf between what they're doing going forward and what they're doing defensively. They're giving everybody, even kind of average teams in the Premier League, they're giving them opportunities. Even Palace at the weekend, which they won comfortably in the end, they gave Palace, you know, 2 or 3 opportunities that they really never should have had. So if City can fix that, it's going to be a big part of whether they'll go to the next.
Can they fix it?
Can they fix it though? Today?
Well, maybe I don't know what the scenario is in a week in terms of who's going to be back. Whether Walker, look at that first goal where I think Diaz had pushed in and Stones comes up to the halfway line. Akanji then pushes in. They got nothing behind. It's just there's just no need.
Oh, but I mean, you got to ask yourself why are you leaving 2-on-2 at the back against Vinny and Rodrigo with the pace that they've got? Number one. So then it's man against man. If you get done, the ball's in the back of the net. The other thing is decision making. I mean, the second goal, Akanji is in the opposition half and is trying to play offside. I mean, it's just madness. And then you wonder why they're losing 3 goals. Now, the fact is, they've been so good going forward that maybe they've got the attitude of, well, if they score 2 or 3, we're going to score more. But you can't get away with that all the time. You certainly can't play 2v2 with Rodrigo and Vinny. That's
that attitude is, up until last year, that attitude has bit them in the backside in this competition. Not so much in the Premier League, but the teams in the Premier League are not up to the standard of what the teams are now in the quarter-final. This is elite level. And the mistakes you make against, Palace and Nottingham Forest and maybe West Ham and all these sides and get away with it, you're unlikely to get away with it against these teams. And we'll get to Arsenal, but they're kind of finding that out as well. Even though Bayern Munich are struggling, it's a step up at this level. And last year, City were much more clued in with it. The previous years, we've expected them to win this competition year on year until they did. And one of the reasons they didn't win it is because they dominated so many games. I'm thinking Lyon and others, where they battered teams and got caught in the counter-attack because they were in bad positions. It was a little bit of that tonight, and if there's more of that at the Etihad, and that's what Ancelotti and Real Madrid will be saying, listen, let's suck these in at the Etihad. Yeah. They're going to come out, they're going to go for it. We know how they play, we'll get them on the counter-attack. It's not rocket science. That's what they're going to try and do.
Robbie, you've seen a lot of Real Madrid this season. It's a cliche, isn't it? They just seem to up their game for this competition. As Craig said, Vinicius Jr. today was amazing.
Yeah, but it's what you expect from those two players, and maybe even Valverde today. His energy and his enthusiasm to get forward at times. Bellingham didn't play quite so well. He looked a bit slightly off the pace. But if you watch Real Madrid every week, when they really raise their game, those two players keep doing the same things. Real Madrid, doesn't matter who they're playing against, will defend deeply and counter-attack through that space. And obviously Pep Guardiola must have known that. The defenders must have known that. That's why those decisions were even worse by Man City.
A word on Haaland, as Robert mentioned, a quiet game for him.
I feel a bit sorry for him in a sense that we always talk about Haaland when he doesn't score. But I think he's a victim, and it's a consequence of the way they play. That a lot of times he's shown for the ball, and I agree. And listen, I don't disagree with Stewart, and we've talked about this before. There has been times this year where, particularly the Arsenal game, where his first touch hasn't been the best, and his link-up play hasn't been the best, and we get that. But I do, in a sense, feel it's not short of him trying to make runs and get in good positions. It's the fact that sometimes they go back and they go side and they go forward, and Foden comes into that little space, and then he's got to make a move, Haaland, to take some defenders away. And I don't think he's getting on the ball as much as he would like, but I think that's a consequence of the way, at times, Manchester City play.
Well, they don't fling it in, ever.
Right.
There was one in the second half, and I said to you, Silva's just rolled it back to Alvarez, and Haaland is standing 1-on-1 with Rudiger. There's nobody else near the two of them. They're probably around the penalty spot. Alvarez, throw it in, whip it in. I don't care. I don't want him to do 1-on-1 against Haaland, 12 yards out, 1-on-1. If it's a ball in the air, if it's a ball crossed in, I don't want him to do it. But they never, ever put it in. Not even the odd occasion. It just never happens. So we can talk about his hold-up play, but if they don't put the ball in the box for him, then he's definitely not going to get on the end of it.
The one guy that puts it in, normally quite early on a cutback, Kevin De Bruyne, you often see him peeling from the middle of the park or the right side out to the wide position, and then he takes a cutback from one of the players and he whips it in first time. He's kind of one of the few that do that. If you look at Jack Grealish is a player that likes to take a few touches, maybe too many at times. Look, he's not at the top of his game, Erling Haaland, but I don't think it's all down to him. I think it's a lot down to the way City are playing.
Jurgen?
Yeah, I feel for Erling Haaland because obviously it's not easy in these games to get him into good positions. It's not easy to get him the ball into, in a situation where he can, maybe with 1-against-1, can turn around and score a goal. His link-up play is difficult because if he's left alone, especially if you're left alone against Rüdiger, which was the case quite often today, he fights a little bit his own big battle, and he needs support then. And obviously when you have then in a team like Man City, usually in the Premier League, they have 80% possession, 85% possession, and they bunker in, they park the bus in front of the goal. There's no real space for Erling. It's difficult for him. Where do I run? Where do I open myself? How do I find the connection? With De Bruyne, there is a natural connection. So when De Bruyne is on the field, he always has an eye on Haaland, for his runs. But when De Bruyne is not there, he struggles a little bit more. And so I feel for him. It's tough for him because especially in games like today, Real Madrid, this is the type of game where you want to shine. You want to show the people that you are capable to kill a game off against such a big name. And unfortunately, didn't have the opportunities to do so.
Jurgen, just a word on the opening goal. As a coach, would you salute the brilliance of Bernardo Silva or question your goalkeeper?
Yeah, you got to swallow that one as a goalkeeper. Yeah, you got to admit that this was yours. So, 3-3 going into the second leg. Manchester City favourites, obviously.
Yeah. And just go back to one thing I think you touched on, either just when we came on or just before we came on, was the body language. And I know none of us are body language experts, but we've watched a lot of La Liga this season, and obviously previous season having the rights, and the phenomenon that is Jude Bellingham,
yep.
And he has been. It's been certainly the first half of the season was almost beyond belief what this guy was doing. But more than maybe a lack of form or a little bit of tiredness or just taking a bit of a break, it's the attitude. I think it's getting a little concerning for me, and maybe that's where he's got a really experienced manager will come in and Ancelotti and have a little word with him.
There's a lot of complaining, isn't there?
There's a lot. It almost seems to me, and it's not just here. There's been a lot of La Liga games, and maybe some of it has been just, but not always, where he's felt that the referee has owed him one. And we've talked about Vinicius Junior trying to referee games and getting the hump and his headspace just goes.
Yeah.
Right when he feels it's going against him, and I'm seeing a little bit of that in Jude Bellingham. And I think it's taken away from what he does best. And he just seems to have spent a lot of time in the last, I'm going to say, 6 or 7 weeks, complaining rather than just getting on with it. And again, we saw that in the game tonight. And we didn't then see the best Jude Bellingham.
Is that him getting too big for his boots? Because he did the same with England. We talk about how he's a nice guy, seems to have his feet on the ground, always seems to say the right thing. But is he starting to believe everything that's been said about him? Now that he's got an attitude change that I deserve to be getting fouls. I deserve...
Right.
It's kind of... That could be turning into me, which obviously is going to affect him.
I mean, it's hard not to... I mean, I would imagine, I don't know, being at a club that size, doing what he did as a youngster. Don't forget he went to Germany at 16 years old to play for Dortmund for 3 years. I mean, it's quite incredible. But then to go in and basically carry this team on your shoulders for basically the first half of the season. And every week we're talking about it, and every week we saw that sort of...
Yes.
Where he's just taking the adulation of the crowd because he's the main man, and rightly so. And I think that is difficult for any player not to let that just start to get to you a little bit. And I think he's got a very good manager, and if he needs his feet to get back on the ground, but I do... think we've all seen that little side of him in recent weeks.
Do you agree, Robbo?
Absolutely. He's become an angry young man when he first went there. And that was a great picture that Craig just painted there of the adulation he was taking. He had a smile on his face. He was enjoying his game. For the last 6-7 weeks, he hasn't enjoyed his game. He's fighting with the referees, fighting with the opponents. He's shrugging his shoulders at every opportunity. And we're not seeing the same Jude Bellingham. But I also think he's just lacking that touch, a yard of pace that he had at the beginning of the season when he was fresh. He's just starting to tire, and that's maybe why he's angry with himself at times, or frustrated with himself as well.
Jurgen, how would you manage this?
Well, talking to him, take him out for coffee, have a chat with him, and then I'm sure Carlo Ancelotti is doing that because Carlo Ancelotti is a master in man management. So I think that's what they should do. That's probably what they do, and I think it's just also normal. It's normal that Jude Bellingham, cannot always play on the top all year long. It's normal that he drops a little bit and has a couple of weeks off in a certain way. And then finds his balance again. This is part of development. This is part of maturing as a player on and off the field. So we don't know what's going on off the field. We don't know, the people that surround him. We don't know his training performances. We don't see him every day. But this is, I think, it's just normal. And now, it's, as I said before, it's crunch time. March, April, May. This is crunch time in the domestic championships and as well, especially in the Champions League. And then we go towards the Euros. And so he's full of ambition. He's full of expectations. And if it sometimes goes to his head, I think it's just normal as well. Because he's a very, very young human being and has to go through a lot. And I think these up and downs are just normal. And Carlo Ancelotti knows that, sees that. And I'm sure that he's talking to him.
We need it to go to Harry Kane's head, Bellingham's head and Phil Foden's head.
Hey, don't worry.
We don't want England.
Don't worry. England winning the Euros, but aside from that, Stevie, give us percentages going into the second leg.
Oof. 60-40 City.
Right.
Yep.
We saw the 4-0, didn't we, of course, last year. Could we see that replicated, that sort of scoreline?
No, because I don't think City can keep a clean sheet.
Right.
But at the same time, you've got to think that, listen, if you can score 3 at the Bernabeu when you're at home with that crowd behind you, you've got to think they're going to score more goals. And they can only be better defensively.
60-40?
60-40, and I'm the same. It's unlikely Ancelotti would be watching, or he's not watched the videos of the last game at the Etihad where, as you mentioned, they got hammered, and not taking any lessons from that and saying, listen, we cannot do this again or we'll get destroyed. So I'm expecting this very, very similar game, but City favourite.
Rudiger will definitely start for this second leg. When you remember, he dropped in, of course, for the return leg.
He loves a fight, doesn't he?
Oh, Rudiger loves it.
He loves it.
Absolutely. Robbo, 60-40, where are you going?
I'm going to go 65-35, just to prove my maths is quite good. So, I think Man City will have too much for Real Madrid. At the Etihad, I think the crowd, everything about it, I still think there'll be a threat on the counter-attack, but not so much without the crowd behind them. I think, Man City to win the game.
Jurgen, you want to show off your maths as well?
No, I go 50-50.
Oh!
and I could even see an extra time there. Because we don't have the away goal anymore. So, maybe a 1-1. The one goal could maybe come by Bellingham.
There you go.
That's how fast it can go. That's how fast it can go.
Yeah.